Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve, where communication matters. Join us as we discuss effective ways to communicate, bridge the gaps, and build long-lasting relationships within your business and life. Here are your hosts, Asha Prasad and Steve Harper.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, Steve. How's it going?
Good. Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. I am your host, Steve Harper, and with me, as always, is Dr. Asha Prasad. How are you doing today, Asha?
I'm doing good. It's another Freaky Friday. Sorry, I apologize ahead of time just in case we have internet issues, but, it's just one of those things.
Yep. In pre-show, we had internet issues, and I'm like, oh, yes. Great. This is how it's going to be today, I think. Fantastic. Oh, great. Well, how's your week been?
It's been going pretty good, Steve. It's been going pretty good. It's been, I can't believe, we're in middle of May now. What is up with that? That's really crazy. That's really, but no, it's been going good. How about you? Anything
good.
interesting happen?
We got, I just got back from a little bit of travel. Went to see my dad and take him to a follow-up appointment for his, he's still recovering from his 5 fracture fun time. But he's getting around really good, doing really well. In fact, doctor said that for an 86-year-old guy, he can't believe he is as spry and recovering as quickly as he is. So, come from good stock apparently. So that's always a positive. So
that's good.
He told me to tell you hi. He's been an avid listener of our show and enjoying it.
Awesome. Thank you.
He doesn't see the video because he can't quite figure out the YouTube. He's like, that YouTubes. I don't understand the YouTubes. But I get the podcast because Alexa brings it to me. I'm like, just keep that way. So we, for those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time or trying to figure out what the heck we're talking about, Dr. Asha Prasad and I have a podcast, which is what we're doing right now. But Dr. Asha loves to be on camera and forced me to be here.
All right. Right.
Yeah,
Steve.
she's insisted that we do this as a live stream so that we can record our podcast and allow people to see, who we are and get to know us and our personalities. I don't know if it's actually helped us, Dr. Asha, because I think people are like, why is Dr. Asha with this dork? But I have, whatever.
No, Steve. You know what? I think it was funny because I got some feedback. Some comments from our last week's show because we were like
we were not drunk,
and
let's just say that right now.
Let's just make a disclaimer right there. But it was really funny because I had about 3 different people say to me, "You guys should do more shows like that."
Yeah.
I'm like, "What? Really? Okay, fine, we can do that."
We got off that show and we were like, oh my God, that was maybe off the rails. I'm not even sure what we said or what we did, but I don't know.
Exactly.
It seemed to resonate. I had people who were like, oh, you guys are hilarious. I get it. Your podcast is like a comedy show, right?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
sure. Yes.
Yeah. I'm thinking if that's where we came across, we might be missing the mark, or maybe we should be going the other direction from what we intended for this podcast.
Maybe that's true.
Well, before we dive in, because today's topic is going to be kind of a fun one to have a conversation around, which is the downside of social media. We've had a few people that have made inquiries this past week about the coaching program that we have been talking about. Do you want to share a little bit about our Lightning Strike coaching program?
So this program is Steve and I together. You're getting 2 coaches for the price of 1. This is going to be an intensive, really fun. It's a one-off session. I think it's 90 minutes, Steve, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And we will work with you on anything that you're wanting to work on, really. Any kind of, whether it's, starting your business, or maybe you're dealing with something within your company right now. Maybe you've got some hesitations about what your right decision is, what you should be doing, if you want to talk about strategy, whatever it is. Steve and I come and approach this session with 2 very different backgrounds, but we really work well as a team together in coaching people. in whatever it is that they're doing. So we have this special offer right now that we have, and you can see, Steve, you have the website there. I think you have the website up there. Yeah.
Yep. So it's at ripplecentral.com. It's $316 one-time payment. I mean, Asha, some of these sessions have gone well beyond the hour and a half, so we want to make sure that you get the value for your money. But like Asha said, we will dive into anything that you want to attack. And what we've actually found is a lot of people are being like, I'm dealing with something unique in terms of, maybe a job change or a situation here that we're looking to do something a little bit different. And ultimately, we want to kind of, do something, a little, I need a shot in the arm. I need some inspiration. I need some motivation, or I need another set of ears and eyes on what I'm doing from a strategy perspective. And so this gives us an opportunity to kind of, dive into the situation and give some perspective and be another sounding board for what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that really does help. With the people that we've worked with, Steve, and just like the feedback that we've gotten has been really tremendous to be able to see people shift from the beginning of our session to afterwards of knowing exactly what it is that they need to have their next step be. So
yep, absolutely. Well, I'm realizing I screwed up our overlay here, so let me adjust this.
Did you?
And you're like really short today. I don't know.
I am short.
Most of the time, you're like taller
That's
on
weird.
the screen. I think
That's
it's not.
weird.
I think it's not just the internet that's messing with us today. We have some other. We have some other things at work.
I'm Asha and Alice in Wonderland. So I'm Asha in Wonderland.
Well, did you happen to see over there? Because for those of you that don't know, Dr. Asha is in the future in the Netherlands. She's 7 hours ahead of us right now, from those of us that are in the U.S. But I don't know if you got to see it. Maybe it was last week, Dr. Asha, that. They had this picture of the Bidens with the Carters.
Yes,
and it was like the way they were like little people. It was like something you saw from like It's
weird.
a Small world. Like
I know that
Disneyland.
was so weird. That was so weird. I thought, is that purposely done or what?
I don't know.
That?
They kind of look like they could be like just those hand puppets. Like the Carter hand puppets. I don't know. It was very odd, but.
It was odd.
That's what's striking me right now because you're shrinking it as we go forward. I keep telling my boys that I was once 6 foot, but now every year that I go for my physical, they're like, "What happened?" I mean, you're like
you were a giant when I first met you years ago, Steve.
Well, I mean, everybody's a giant to you anyway. So,
It's so true. It's so true. Let's be honest about that.
And in the history of the world, nobody has ever called me a giant. So I'm definitely keeping this recording. I'm actually going to
keep playing it.
I'm going to actually make my ringtone. I think that what you just said.
Steve, you're a giant. There you go. There's your ringtone.
All right, sweet. I could see just sitting in a restaurant and be like, "Oh, who's that guy?"
Kathy's gonna love that. She's gonna be like, "Oh God."
Absolutely. Well, so today's topic is the downside of social media. We've talked about, different aspects before in different episodes, but, you and I, as we were thinking about it, we've actually had a couple of individual coaching clients, I think, between us that have had challenges with either building their brand online and dealing with some of the haters, or from a personal perspective, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, social media is a really great tool to build and sort of extend whatever it is that you're out there, telling people what you're doing through Twitter, or highlighting vacation photos, etc., through Instagram, or even just social posts on Facebook. But there's also this kind of dark side to social media. And we've had some folks that have really struggled with that, right? Coming through the political season being what it was, dealing with the, very unusual circumstances of the pandemic and falling on one side of the mask or no mask kind of situation. There have been some people that have really been, at least for the clients that I've talked to, really felt bullied and sort of maligned in a lot of ways in how to deal with that. So we talked about this as being kind of an interesting topic to have a conversation over. So, tell our listeners and our audience sort of what your experience has been with social media, what you kind of see as sort of the downfall of, these tools that are really, when used are great, but when they're used for bad, they're pretty bad. Yeah,
they can be really bad. It was interesting. I was having a conversation not too long ago with a client of mine about this same thing because he was very resistant to really engaging in social media for his business. And I was just, we were talking about it. We were having a session about it, just kind of talking about what is it that's holding you back? Like, why are you afraid to do it? And his biggest thing was this vulnerability piece. It kind of puts you out there to everybody, anywhere. And, how strong do you stand in your brand or what you are out there doing? Do you have a thick enough skin to be able to take whatever comes at you and also be able to filter it out too, Steve? Because, one of the things that I have found over the years is that you don't have to read all the messages and you don't have to be, you just don't have to. If you have somebody doing it for you, if you're somebody like, for me, for the longest time, I was doing everything social media wise myself in the business. I wanted to have my hand in it because I wanted to be, kind of in control of what was going out there. What I realized with that was that, yes, I would get distracted and I would be kind of pulled in different directions depending on feedback that I was getting. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm getting away from my own messaging. I'm getting away from what I really want to share with people and what I really want to be out there helping people with. Why am I letting that noise kind of get to me? It's just, so it was interesting. And in that process in my business now, although I am behind most of every decision that's made in social media in my business, I do have someone that is handling that for me. So where I'm not spending a lot of time, like day in and day out on social media. However, I do engage with, potential clients and customers and different people and that kind of thing. So it's been very interesting because you have to have, I think, a thick skin to it to a certain degree. Wouldn't you say, Steve? I mean, have you not learned that too, like over the years being out there for your brand? I mean, because whether it's your company or not, people tend to want to go towards the person. They want to tend to direct things towards the person.
Yeah. And, like I said, there's good and there's bad, right? So, I tend to try and put out a positive note of some kind virtually every day on a Ripple Thought of the Day on Twitter. And sometimes I carry that over to Facebook and, sometimes I don't just, time wise, unlike you, I don't have like, this ginormous social media team that controls.
I don't have a ginormous one, but no.
Yeah. I have a team of one and it's me and he's not very bright. So that's the problem.
No.
But, I had an incident myself that I've had a couple of that have had people that have been like, you always, your positive posts make me sick, or, why do you always put stuff out there? This is like fluff. There's enough of that, junk. And what I was trying to put is to try and encourage people, to look for the good, to try and do good things, to make, positive ripples out there. The big push around my book is always about the power of connecting, and connecting with people often comes from looking at things from a little different perspective. And I was pretty surprised. I've had some pretty hateful messages, both on Twitter and Facebook, about positive posts. Some from people that knew me back in high school, and where do you get off trying to tell us or preach at us? And I'll tell you, early on, it really bothered me, and I tended to really kind of obsess about it because it's like, well, maybe there's some truth to what they're saying. Maybe there's some, maybe they got some validity to the points that they're making. Who do I think I am, right? To be able to put these things out there. And it took a bit for me to get around that process because it's so much, the volume on, the volume on negative comments is so much louder, right? Than the positive.
That's true.
We tend to, as our ego loves to take control of the negative and loves to have us, just focus on that. You could have 10 people say a positive thing to you, but that one person that says that thing can be really, really horrible. And it can be debilitating. And so it really, it was something I struggled with for a long time. I'm curious, what was the tipping point for you to finally figure out, hey, look, I'm gonna, have to take a different approach or step away from, obsessing over, any of the negativity that might be out there directed at you or your brand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you know what, the thing about that is, Steve, just as you were talking, I just remembered not that long ago, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, I had somebody come, from my past that I knew in high school that literally, I mean, just the comments were just like, this quote would be great if your name wasn't attached to it. I mean, just like really like, because it was one of my own quotes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just like, what? And I was like, what? Like, what, wait a minute. And I knew this person very well, considered this person a friend at that time. Okay. So it was like, what is going on? And so then I got a private message from this person, just awful. And I will tell you, after that happened, I was devastated on so many levels, because I thought, wait a second, this was somebody that I trusted as a friend, and this is somebody that I knew, like, where is this coming from? So at that point, I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, what is my intention here? What am I wanting to put out there? Why am I even doing this? What is it about, building my brand and letting people know what I'm about and helping people be more positive, be more conscious, be more aware? What is that? And then that for me was like the big breaking point, because I realized, like, wait a second. Okay, I don't want to have all my energy being sucked into this, because it has nothing to do with me. I mean, somebody that made that comment, they are entitled to have their opinion. And also, they're also entitled to have an opinion of me, 20 years ago, and not know what I've been through since then to know who I am now and what's made me who I am right now. So, and they may have not moved on. Maybe they've had some crappy stuff happen that they haven't been able to get out of. And, whatever the case is, I thought, you know what? Let me switch things up and let me change kind of the way my approach is. That for me was a big turning point, actually.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like you, Steve. I had a hard time dealing with that, especially when you're trying to put positivity out and you're wanting to share that with people and uplift, because there's so much negativity going on.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear when people are just like, yeah, who are you to say that? Or we don't need more of that positivity, but then we just have to realize, like, people are used to getting negativity.
Yeah.
When we turn on the television, turn on the news, we're used to getting negativity.
Yeah, that's true.
And so
Well, kind of the interesting thing you said there, right? They're entitled to their opinion, but, are they entitled to share their opinion with you directly or about you to the world? And these tools make it very simple and easy to do that, but you have to really question people's motivations for doing it, right? At the end of the day, especially some of the stuff that I've seen, not just about me, right? But, people in general, it's like, would you actually say that to that person if they were sitting across the table from you or you saw them in real life? And, the answer probably is no. Although in today's society, people have become emboldened in a big way, but confrontation tends to be something we seem to have, sort of look at as kind of a blood sport these days, and it's unfortunate. But one of the people that I had some negative comments from was similar situation. Somebody I went to school with, and like where did you how did you become this Ripple guy, and where do you I mean, you were such a dork back in high school, and you've just like grown bigger, and you're right. It's like, wow,
you're a bigger dork.
Like, wow. I'm like, it's taken me a long time for somebody to recognize my dorkness. I appreciate that. But I message this guy, and I'm like, hey, look, what's your problem, dude? I mean, like, I don't even know you anymore. And, obviously you're following me. So, I mean, there must be something, unless, it really means something to you to want to make somebody feel really bad. But I mean, it really says more about them than it does you. And,
it does.
I told this guy, I'm like, hey, look, I don't know, if we had problems in high school or whatever, but, I don't know what the issue would be today. And clearly you've got something to say. So how about we have a conversation about it? Why don't we set up a call?
Yeah.
Why don't we, do that? Yeah, I don't want to talk to you. I don't have any interest in talking to you. And it's like, well, but you have interest to spend time behind the keyboard, right?
Exactly.
The keyboard and the, behind the phone, and, when you can comment or you can, fire things off into social media, you become so much more powerful because you have that at your fingertips, and you can do it at a moment's notice. But to actually have a civil sit down conversation, people aren't necessarily that emboldened to do so, because I think to a degree that takes away all their power. And the sad thing, and I would hate to be a kid at this point in time, coming through high school
Yes.
or middle school. Oh God, I could imagine middle school and how painful that was. But the brutality by which these social media platforms allow the bullying and the picking on, and it's not just to us as professionals and our brand, et cetera. It's really the kids of today are really experiencing it in a big way. And you see some of these kids where, you might have been picked on in the schoolyard or, around your locker and, in school.
Exactly.
Now this thing extends, to an unlimited range, and other people pile on. So it becomes this really bad, situation that just magnified because these social media tools allow it to be.
That's true, Stephen. You know what? I do think that that's one of the downfalls. I mean, here's my thing is that you're right. It kind of gives people they feel very powerful behind a keyboard with distance. They would never say it probably to somebody's face, more than likely. And I always tell people, like, before you send that message, I don't care what it is. If it's a text message, a WhatsApp, an email, or a comment, there is another person on the other side of that screen that is going to receive that.
Yep.
Now, and I think this is where we've gotten so far away. The more that we engage in technology, we've gotten away from that human connection to realize that there's an actual human being that's receiving that. Yeah. How would you feel? How would you feel? And that's where, for the kids these days, I'm grateful that none of documented on social media. Yeah. It's not, didn't have to deal with any of that because it was hard enough as it was, getting picked on and all sorts of things. Like, I would hate to have that. I mean, and it's one of those things too. I do think that there is a healthy balance of how much time, whether you're professional or your kid, whoever it is, how much time you engage in that kind of world. I kind of see it as its own little world in a way. Yeah. Yes, it's an extension of our world, our reality, but it's like, how much time do you want to spend time in there?
Yeah.
And limit yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you talk about the negativity of that interaction, right? But I think the biggest challenge that everybody faces these days is it isn't just one-on-one, one-on-one. You and I can't say something about one another and it's just now private. It's actually for the world's consumption.
Exactly.
And you get one, individual who retweets it or, screenshots it, sends it out, well, now it's magnified. And so the brutality of the negativity on the social media front is so much more severe than you could have ever imagined. And the magnitude of the nice thing about social media is there tends to be it's a really small window of attention because there's so much other stuff out there. Yeah. But when something does get attention and focus, you see things go viral in high schools and, within communities about certain people, and, whether people recognize it as being true or not, they'll, sort of, lob onto it and kind of perpetuate it. Just blows up. And it's really, really disappointing and scary, right? For that to happen. And you look at the downside of the tools is that you can't just put your hand up and say, hey, look, this is inappropriate, or this is not true, or this is not, there's no way to pull the the string on the bus or the cord to stop the train or the bus to say, I want to get off this, because it can just continue on whether you're participating or not. And that's the scary thing, I think, not only for kids, but I think for individuals like us, or for your brand, is those things can just take on a life of their own. So, just curious, I know you and I have talked about this. We've had, folks that have been involved in these kinds of situations. What advice do you give to your coaching clients when, there is this bit of a PR nightmare because somebody says something that, maybe it was a bad customer situation or whatever, but, maybe there's some truth to it, but it's kind of taken on a life of its own. What do you recommend to that business leader to do at that point to, try and reverse those, the public opinion? Or do you suggest they engage? Do you suggest they ignore it? Do you have, social media teams that, jump into action to try and, mitigate the perception? Or what do you recommend?
I mean, Steve, that's a great question. One thing that I think it really depends, for me, it's one of those things that I've always seen that, the more that you focus on something and the more that you put your energy towards something, the more it's going to grow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to pick and choose what you're going to respond to. It doesn't mean, you can always respond and say, you know what, or get somebody on your team to respond and say, sorry that you feel this way. Is there anything that we can do? You want to discuss this, or is there anything that we can do to make it right? It depends on what the situation is. Are they complaining about a product that they purchased, or, whatever it is, what can we do? But you don't always have to do it, because sometimes what happens is, as I said, the more that you focus your energy, the more that you really put forth the energy, you're just making it grow. You're giving, maybe that person's only doing it to get attention. They want more attention.
Yep.
So I'm a firm believer in that. Sometimes I do advise some of my clients to just ignore it if they can. If it's keeping them up at night, or if it's something that they just cannot let go, they need to figure out a way, like, what is it going to take to make them feel okay with it, complete with it? Do they need to, make sure that this person cannot engage anymore on their social media pages? Do they need to block them? Do they need to, there's so many different things that you can do. And I know it's easier said than done, because sometimes we want to get in defense mode. We want to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
And I understand that. But here's the thing. If you are being truly, as authentic and as intentional as you possibly can, the people that know you, the people that love you, that love the work that you're doing, that love what you're doing, are going to know that they will actually come to your defense a lot of times.
They will.
They'll be like, hey, wait a second. That is not true about that guy. You know what I mean?
That's absolutely accurate. Yeah.
So I think that you do have to pick and choose with it. So I kind of give a variety of advice with that. It really does depend on the situation and what has really come up.
Yeah, there's this great story, actually. Sarah Silverman, the comedian, tells this great story. Alan Alda has a podcast called Clear and Vivid, and one of his first episodes when he launched his show was with Sarah Silverman, and she was talking about the Twitter hate. And there was one guy that just blasted her on Twitter, and it bothered her, and so. They always tell, and I've got a couple of friends in PR that say, don't ever directly engage. It just makes it worse. Right. But she took the stance that, I'm going to try and figure out what's going on with this guy. Why does he hate me so much? Right. And so she messages him back publicly and says, hey, gosh, that was, pretty harsh, and you must really be in pain. And, that's all she said, or something to that effect. Right. And so, you got to go back and watch this episode or listen to this podcast episode of Alan Alda. It's a brilliant show, by the way. I listened to it. It's one of my favorite podcasts. But this one really caught my attention because, it really was a way to kind of reverse the fortunes of the negativity. She engaged him with kindness and in sort of an approach, but basically she brought that word pain up. And he turned out that he responded. Yes, how would you know anything about my life? You're just a rich millionaire, and I'm in such a bad state. And it was that he had just gone through, and he had some health situations and issues that she later discovered that just really caused him to have some negativity. And at the moment that her tweet probably crossed his screen, he just lashed out, right? But she reached out. And the thing that I think that was important is that she was respectful and mindful of the situation and was trying to diffuse it to a certain degree, not because she was worried about what this guy would do to her brand, or not because, she was trying to get any kind of positive press on it. But this guy actually engaged, and she said, if you're willing to take this conversation into DM, right, direct message, then I'm willing to engage and see what your concerns are, what your problems are. And as she got to know this individual, she realized that this guy was just really struggling with his life. And she happened to be the one person at that point that he felt obligated to lash out to. And you could have ignored it. You could have gotten into a, tit for tat spat with that individual publicly on Twitter, or, she could try and figure out what was going on. And she had in her heart the good nature to say, look, this guy must really be in pain to be lashing out to me like this, and saying very inappropriate things. And I'm, not doing justice to the story. I highly encourage people to go back and listen to it for their own. But, she really ended up being this guy's advocate and helping him along the way, including, I think, contributing some money to his health situation because he had really fallen on hard times, and it was just, it had just come to a boiling point. And I think about all those situations, that we go out there and you're like, just ignore the haters, try not to let it bother you. But then you also have to understand, a lot of times, and it's kind of like, the bully in the schoolyard, when they do these things, they're the ones that are the most insecure of all, but they want to come across because they want to make and belittle somebody else. They want to make themselves feel big by doing so. I think that the schoolyard, unfortunately, now is just extended from the playground to the world and all these platforms. And so it's kind of interesting, her approach and what to do. And I've actually taken a couple of attacks like that, and I've converted some people into, just understanding, hey, look, my motivations are just pure, right? They're just the way they are. And in her case, it was a situation where, she took the time to recognize somebody who, in their right mind probably wouldn't say as many hateful things as they were. So there had to be something else going on. And so there is that, that's a downside of social media, that it becomes so easy, but there's a positive side to the fact that you can also say, hey, well, maybe there is a perspective here I need to learn, or maybe there is a perspective or another set of, opinions that, are worth exploring. And that's what good connection and good conversation potentially leads to. Those that are just hateful won't ever engage because they don't know how, because their argument or whatever they're spewing about you or your brand out there, it's generally like a house of cards. It's not built on anything substantial. Exactly. And so they have no argument to support it.
Yeah, no, you know what, Steve? I love that story, and I think it's great because it is true. I mean, when people do this kind of stuff, it is coming from a place of pain or insecurity or whatever it is. I mean, you don't know what's going on for somebody. Just like they don't know who you are, we don't know who they are. We don't know what's going on in their lives. And it is, if you are going to engage, definitely being kind, being respectful is always welcome. You know what I mean? I don't think that when people get in this defensive of, I need to defend myself and I need to be just as, petty or that just is not, it doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really bring any, positive resolution. Let me put it that way. You don't really get too far with that.
Well, one of the things I've told my coaching clients is, there is a danger to engaging, especially if it's around your brand, because sometimes you can make a bad situation worse. But there is some value in being the bigger person to say, hey, do you want to have a conversation about this? Tell me what's going on, see if we can help it. Not because I'm trying to rescue my brand or my public brand or, professional brand, necessarily in a public way, so to come across as the bigger person, but really because at the end of the day, sometimes people do have legitimate beefs over various things, right?
That's true.
Maybe they see you on, these great vacations or in front of a nice house, or have a company that's successful and growing, and theirs is struggling, and they're living in a place that they're not very content or happy with. And sometimes there is, there is something else going on with them that really has nothing to do with you or your company that they've decided to target. But I think it becomes a bit of a dangerous game. But I do think that more often than not, if you're willing to engage people and let them have an opportunity, talk it out or to explain their point of view or their perception or what motivated them to take such a angry approach. Sometimes you diffuse that situation in a way that actually converts people and makes them fans. And, that's what happened with Sarah, obviously. And it's I've seen it in my own life. I know you have as well. But it is kind of a dangerous game because there is so much power behind these things, right? You look at the keyboard and it just, you can be a god or goddess behind it. Just like, well, I can spew my opinion and do whatever I want. And especially when it comes to, knocking somebody else or their company down, it's very easy to do it because you're just a few keystrokes away.
Yeah, that is true, Steve. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, how would you handle it though? How would you handle it if you had that day in and day out, like coming at you? I mean, because, as you grow your company, as you grow your brands, it's one of those things that just kind of happens. You get to a bigger audience, you get more people, and not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to think the world of you.
Yeah.
So how would you deal with that, Steve? If you've got 50 different people coming at you every day with all sorts of, I mean, would you engage with every single one of them? Or
I don't think nobody has the emotional time to do that. I don't think. I wouldn't recommend that. Obviously, if you've gotten to the point where you've done something to offend 50 or more people, and it happens, right? You see these Instagram influencers or YouTubers that have, they got people that really love them and people that really hate them.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that the best way to combat that, especially at scale, is to continue to do the best possible job you can to represent the best possible face of whatever it is, your brand or you as an individual. And, you might occasionally give the nod to the haters and say, hey, look, I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
Exactly.
And like with most things that we don't like in life, if I have a meal and I don't like the taste of it, I'm generally not going to come back to have it again. And, if you feel compelled to continue to want to come and have a taste that just doesn't sit well with you, that's really their problem, not yours. Right. And
exactly.
I know it's really hard because I just said, hey, look, maybe engage, get a conversation, but at scale, sometimes that's not easy. And like I said earlier, the biggest problem with social media is maybe that one or two negative opinions or negative comments about you were what it was to begin with, but because people love to pile on, right? Now it's 50, it's impossible to engage them. And so I think at some point it's easy to, to have to default back to hey, you got to ignore the haters and you've got to focus on those that do support you, those that do like what you have to say or what your company does. And, you try and shine a light as much positivity on that as you can. I think you have to do it, but I'm curious. What about you? I mean, would you take a different approach, or how would you go about if you had 50 haters? We may be establishing 50 haters right now. I'm not even sure because I can't see comments coming across. I think our comments must be turned off. Either people are like, I hate these guys. I'm going to go tweet about them, and we'll see it later. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I can learn something, grow from.
Yeah.
No, but you know what, Steve? No, I mean, you know what? I would definitely not engage. I was thinking about, like, for example, you see a lot of the politicians and celebrities that deal with this on a mass scale. I mean, I remember seeing an interview with, I think it was Bradley Cooper a couple of years ago, and he was talking about, because they were just like randomly like rapid fire questions or whatever. Yeah. And they asked him, what's one thing that you would never do? And he said, I never Google myself. I just think, and then they were like, okay, we want a story behind that. And he was talking about how, whenever you keep on reliving it and you get confronted with it, it can affect you so deeply that you totally, if you're a very positive person and you're about bringing positivity to the world, you're not doing that you're not doing yourself a favor. You're not doing the people that love what you do and love what you share with them. You're not doing them a favor either. So I wouldn't engage. I probably would just ignore at that point and just figure out a way. And if it's something legitimate, of course I would, be like, okay, wait a minute. What could I have done differently? Because we're all human beings. At the end of the day, here's the thing. We're all human beings. If we have an off day, we have an off day. Sometimes we lose our temper. Sometimes we, are upset. We are not conscious in that moment. We're not aware of what we're doing or what we're saying. But, there is a limit to that on both sides of that. Do you know what I mean? You can be criticized. You can criticize people. But just realize, wait a second, they also are human beings. So, for example, someone that is measuring you by the measuring stick that they did 30 years ago, that's not the same measuring stick that they can do that now, because they do not know what all you've been through in that time. So, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting world to navigate in. Well,
and the negativity that you get specifically targeted at you, not you per se, but just in general for us, anybody, it can be very traumatic, right? And that trauma is extremely challenging to get through. And your tendency is to want to see how far it goes, how deep it went, who else is talking about you. And it becomes a really unhealthy curiosity that a lot of people get sucked into, and then you sit there and obsess over it. And you want to try and, lash out or fight against it and say, hey, look, this isn't me, or this isn't my brand, or this isn't, I can't believe somebody just, with the power of a keyboard can, put this out there about you. But you also have to recognize that, at some juncture, you just have to turn it off. And so I recommend to a lot of my clients that, you really minimize the amount of time you spend on social media. The real world's happening out here. Look for and find good sources to spend your time and your efforts on. If you're going to be on social platforms, don't spend your time looking at the negativity. Try and look at the, sites that have more positive stuff going on. And I know that's a challenge because it's not like you have a good, just a, good vibe social network where no negativity is allowed to be. They all have it, right? But at the end of the day, it's also about trying to, take all the good and have it outshadow the bad. And just by, limiting some of that, I think is pretty key. I have a good friend that is a media consultant that's been a coaching client of mine, and she recommends never looking at your comments, right? Never looking, never looking back at your, similar to Bradley's suggestion, never, going back and looking at anybody that might have, tweeted about you or, commented, doing a search on your name on Facebook, because you'll more often than not find somebody who just in that moment felt like they were empowered enough to try and knock you down a few pegs. And it's tough because as your brand, a lot of times, and especially during this pandemic where we're not actually seeing each other face to face, building that brand is a bigger challenge. We depend on some of those tools and resources the social networks give us in order to do that. And that's how we engage with clients, and engage with prospects. And so there is a double-edged sword in that advice, but I recognize it as well, especially if you're in a situation where people have, if you're a beauty influencer or you're talking about, wealth building, et cetera, and you're living in a double wide trailer. I mean, you could be a millionaire double wide trailer owner. I don't know, but the reality is you're going to bring those kinds of things. There's a little bit of ridicule that's going to come along with that kind of thing. Beauty influencers are putting themselves out to a standard of a lot of times, specifically these influencers, they post and look like, amazing, and that's not how they look every day, right? That just happened to be the angle or happens to be the shot or the makeup or whatever. And so there's a bit of, I think, probably expected negativity that comes on that because people, see it or sense it that's not their reality or they could never get there. And you just have to kind of like wonder if, the comments that are out there are just, even worth spending any time, going on. I would just tell my client to hey, you see it, just move on, go to the next one, right? Scroll on by. I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, you know what, Steve? I think it comes down to making it a habit. Making it a habit to focus on the positivity. We've talked about several times not watching the news, for example. Pick and choose what you read about to be informed about the world, but don't let yourself get sucked in. It's the same thing. I mean, I limit my time on social media, although a lot of people think my God, Asha, you're on social media all the time. Yes, it appears to be, but it's not really the case because I've set it up in a way that I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be, doing that because I realized of what it was doing and how much out of the real world it was pulling me out of on so many, you know what I mean, Steve? It's really interesting. I'm just like, wait a minute, what do I want to do? Where do I want to spend my time? Where do I want to spend my energy? And, how can I be the best version of myself? Okay, not spending so much time on social media is a big part of that, so I'm not going to do that. And having the discipline to do it, but yeah.
Well, and also you have that rock star social media team. I mean, you're a conglomerate. So, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you can let those other people deal with your negative comments.
No, those are all mine.
I guess as we finish up, one of the things I would throw out there is, and more or less, this is maybe a message to the haters out there, people that feel like they are empowered or emboldened to be able to make comments about other people and say things. I can't say that I never have said anything negative on social media. That'd be a lie, right? But we've all probably done things or made mistakes. The thing I would tell you as a someone that maybe does it on a regular basis. Not me, but if somebody out there is kind of a hater, whether it be to me, Dr. Asha, the show, anything we're doing out there in the world, is, you really need to look inside yourself and ask yourself what motivates you to want to make somebody feel bad about themselves. And, you can fall on one end of the spectrum politically, you can fall on one end of the spectrum in terms of, your approach to different social issues of the day. But at the end of the day, like Asha said, that's a human being on the other end. And if you feel comfortable, being, the big powerful commenter or, character assassinator behind a keyboard, then I'd welcome you to have that conversation out in public and see if you could say that same thing to that person. I tell people, and, even wrote this advice in the latest edition of my book, is that you got this grandma rule, right? Would your tweet or your comment stand up to what your grandmother, would expect of you? And there's so much that people be like, oh, my grandma would disown me for stuff that I've done. So, but it's a good, before you hit enter, right? Or before you hit send, does this make sense? Is it something that's appropriate? Is it something that's necessary? Is it hurtful? And does it add any value whatsoever? Or just in that little microsecond, does it make you feel more powerful, which makes you feel better? And 30 seconds after you send it, you can't undo it. Are you going to feel the same way? So that's just my way of thinking. So, Dr. Asha, as we are looking to wrap up, why don't we tell people how they can learn more about what we do?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, conversationswithashaandsteve.com, or you can contact us on Facebook, on basically all the social media platforms. You can contact us, and we'd love to hear from our listeners, and with your questions, your comments, or if there are certain topics that you want us to discuss on these live podcast, Facebook lives, just let us know. We'd be happy to. So those are the best ways to get in touch with us.
Absolutely.
And Steve, tell everybody about your book, because I feel like with this topic especially that we're talking about, the power of connection is very important. True connection with each other, with people. I think that your book is really, really, it's a fantastic book, actually. And Steve just came out with it, with his third edition of his book. So, I mean, it's really awesome. But I think it really, in this day and age right now, with what we're dealing with, because we're having to connect so much through technology and not be able to get face-to-face with each other, I think you have some great tips in there also that can help people in better communication. So tell everybody about how they can get their hands on your new book.
Yeah, absolutely. The title of the book is The Ripple Effect, Maximizing the Power of Relationships for Your Life and Business. And like Asha said, this is the third edition. We have added additional content in there about the power of connecting and trying to do things differently, especially in today's unique environment. We're slowly but surely trying to get back to a new set of normal, but there is a need for us to be able to re-engage, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be, out there in different events, conferences, networking events, etc. How you're going to step up your networking game is pretty key. And so that's one of the things that we talk about, as well as social media and some of the do's and don'ts of these different platforms that are out there. And so, definitely appreciate you checking it out. You can find it, more information at ripplecentral.com. That's a good place to order it. You can also get it on Amazon, which the book's doing well. It's on back order right now. So we've got to get more books out to them, which is pretty awesome. But it's also available on Audible. There's a few extra tweaks and tricks that I've put into the Audible that somehow managed to pass muster over there so that they didn't catch. But we have had a good time recording the book. And so on Audible, it's a great way for you to take it in your ears with you to the gym or on a trip or whatever. And Asha, what about you? You've got your book, Authentic Alignment, How Ancient Wisdom and Modern Science Can Revitalize Your Health, Happiness, and Potential. Tell folks about that book and sort of why this is also relevant to where we're at right now and sort of this topic and conversation and how they can find it.
Yeah, so you can find out about what I'm doing on theprasadmethod.com and about the book. The book is really, and it's interesting, Steve, because right now I'm working on another book right now, which we'll talk about soon. Hopefully I'll tell you about that in the next couple of weeks. We can talk about it a little bit more. But that book specifically was written about to be able to help people really assess where they are in their entire wellness, entire well-being, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, all of it, to kind of say, what, if something's not going right, if I'm not really living up to my potential, what's going on? Where am I not authentic? Where am I not in alignment with what it is that my beliefs and values are? And so, that book helps you guide with that. I've got a workbook on there as well that goes along with it, kind of like a study workbook that people can really dive in deeper, kind of like that. People that love to journal really enjoy that workbook to be able to go through it. So, but you can find that on there, and you can find it on Amazon. And but yeah, so that's how people.
And your
can
website, right? theprasadmethod.com.
Yes, theprasadmethod.com. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I mean, this has been a really fun conversation for us to have. We're super excited. Yes. And obviously, before we go, one last plug for our coaching program that we've got going on. We just want to make sure everybody is aware. We've got the ability to take some additional clients on for lightning strike coaching. You can find information if you go to ripplecentral.com/shop. You'll find it under programs. But lightning strike coaching for us is a program that we have developed where it's really designed as a single lightning strike session where we can cover just about anything that is important for you to want to talk about. We will be able to leverage this in a way that allows us to, focus on any specific items that are important for you, right? Maybe you're thinking about a job change. Maybe you're thinking about starting your own business, struggling with some interpersonal relationships. You're trying to figure out how to quiet your mind. Whatever the topic might be, Dr. Asha and I are happy to have that conversation and visit with you about it. So it's about an hour and a half. Sometimes these sessions are lasting longer, but you get two coaches for the price of one, and it really is an immersive experience. We've had folks that have come back and said, man, I really like this. I really want to, come back and maybe do this again, or want to talk to you guys about a more formal program. And we would be more than happy to, talk to you about options there. But, it's kind of a one-shot deal, right? At the end of the day, we're not trying to push you into a program. We're not trying to, hey, if you like this, you get 6 more sessions if you buy this bundle. We probably should, but I guess we don't. Everybody else does it, but we don't do it that way. There's zero pressure whatsoever. This is just an opportunity for you. If you like what you hear on this podcast, or you like seeing this on video, this type of mojo that Dr. Asha and I have really resonates well into this dual coaching environment. So we have a lot of fun with it. So we'd certainly be open to answering any questions that you might have, and or signing you up for a session. You will not be disappointed. We promise you. Well said, Steve. And I want to thank everybody that joins us all these years and has joined us today. And if you have any questions or anything, just drop a comment in the comment box, and we will be reading our comments, right, Steve? Absolutely, yes, and we will respond to them for sure. And we will respond. Yes. She's like sort of implied like I don't do that. I do that. No, not at all. Oh my God, no. If there's somebody that always responds, it's Steve. Definitely. It's true. He does. Yeah. Well, apparently even to the haters. Yeah. I mean, you respond to everybody. Well, it was a great conversation. Asha, we will be back in touch very soon, or be back with a new episode. And we really appreciate everybody tuning in. And you guys go out there and do good in the world. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Okay. See you next time, Steve. All right. See ya.